Hello, beautiful people. So, for this year, for my birthday, I decided I wanted to make myself a dress because I'm just that self centered, I guess. And I had never really made dresses like that. I'm more of of the mindset of making cosplay, so I never sewn clothing, like day to day clothing. I don't know if I consider this day to day clothing, but you know what I mean. Um, so there is going to be a lot of errors. This dress is not perfect at all. It was something nice to make for pictures. So enjoy. To start, so my pattern didn't quite fit. It was like 2 inches off, so I went ahead and added 2 inches to my pattern, just like 1 inch on either side roughly. And I also shortened my bodice so that the skirt will start right underneath my bust. This is what the pattern pieces ended up looking like after adding an inch roughly on either side. And to start, I'm just going to begin with my lining pieces, starting with the skirt and then just doing the bodice pieces. I'm going to be starting with the bodice. I'm going to be taking the center bodice piece and the two side bodice pieces and pitting them together, just following the instructions that the pattern came with. And by following the instructions, I mean not even reading them and just kind of looking at the pictures and being like, yeah, that seems about right. After sewing it together, I went ahead and pressed it all down. And for the back bodice pieces, it had darts that I had to put in. I've never done darts myself, so it was kind of a little bit of a fidgeting with it and not really knowing what I'm doing. I'm pretty sure I could have looked up a video, but you know, why do that when you can do it the hard way? And for the tulle pieces for like the bodice, I kind of folded the fabric in half so that way I'd have duplicate pieces, because I want it to be doubled up. After cutting out those pieces, I went ahead and took the duplicates and lined them up, pinning them together so that way it's like nice and layered. And for sewing wise, I just took the same approach I did with the lining bodice. It's just going to be exactly the same. No changes, no different, nothing. The only thing is just going to be the tiniest bit more difficult because it's tulle, and tulle can be very transparent at times, especially if you're looking at it for a long time. Your eyes just kind of can't focus on it anymore. It just makes everything so much more difficult. Once I was done, I went ahead and I attached it to the dress, sewed that bad boy up, and then went ahead and pressed those edges so it laid nice and flat on the dress. And this is just like a what's called interfacing lining piece. Is just going to add structure to the dress, but because of the adjustments I made to the pattern, it didn't quite line up, so I just pinned it on and kind of cut off the excess that didn't quite match up with the dress. And it's just the interfacing I'm cutting out to attach to the lining piece. Once you got that shape, you're going to want to trim it down a little bit so it's slightly smaller. And then I just attached it using the instructions that the interfacing came with. while I was like pinning the interfacing to the dress, I noticed that it didn't quite fit. It was slightly smaller than the actual dress, so I had to like make another adjustment instead of, you know, remaking it would be the better option of fixing this issue, but I just didn't have the time to do that, so I just kind of cut it down the middle and called it a day. And as you can see here, the tulle is kind of in between the lining and the interfacing right sides facing together, so that way once you sew it you can flip it over and it'll give it like a seamless look along the edges. It's going to make it nice and pretty. And I just sewed that bad boy shut. And I just flipped it inside out so that's correctly facing and all that jazz. Once I was finished doing that, I went ahead and pressed it all down. And then I just kind of pin the bottom of the tulle down so I can sew that down, so that when I attach it to the skirt, there isn't any parts where it shifted. You may notice in some parts of this video, it almost looks like I flipped some steps around or skipped something, because when I'm working, I don't work linearly. I kind of flip around, jump around while I'm working. And just to make it less confusing, I kind of just try to put the steps together instead of doing it in order of how I actually work. I actually sewed the top where the interfacing is so that it wouldn't flip over while I'm wearing it. And this is the back of the skirt. As you can see, there's a little bit of an opening. That's where the zipper is going to be sitting. I went ahead and sewed that off camera, and I'm just putting the top of the skirt and the back of the skirt together. Make sure to leave an opening for the pockets so you don't sew your pockets shut. I've done that before. Was very upset. And then I'm just adding some pleats because the skirt is going to be poofy, so you're going to measure like a good amount past your waist measurement, so that way you can gather it up and it adds a little volume. You might notice that the pleats are a little messy and don't look very nice. I honestly didn't care enough to make it look nice, since it's the lining, it's not going to be very visible, so I didn't really take my time, too much time with that. And here I just kind of tried it on to see how much I needed to cut off. I put some pins down to make sure everything's nice and straight while cutting it, and I also left it in for when I started hemming it, because when I hem it, I kind of use it like a guide to make sure everything's nice and straight, because there's been times in the past where I've like hemmed something and you can tell where I kind of went off slightly and it just looks a little wonky in some spots. I just like taking that little extra step, taking that little extra time, make sure everything's nice and straight. And then for the tulle layer, I'm going to be cutting off 6.5 inches, since the skirt top tulle layer needs to be slightly longer than the lining layer. And I made lengthwise, like my waist wise, I made it about 4 times my waist size, so it gives it a nice poof. And then for the lining tulle skirt, I did use a different gathering method. I used the longest stitch and just a regular straight stitch. And I just sewed the top of the skirt. This is a much easier and faster method for gathering. I don't know why I didn't use this method for the lining. I should have done that to begin with, but I didn't. Oh well. And then you grab one of the strings and kind of just tug along your stitch, and it will make this gathering. And then you just gather it until it's your measurements. And then you can stop there and you can pin it onto your skirt, your lining skirt. And you just sew that bad boy together. Make sure you got yourself some fresh needles on that sewing machine, because my sewing machine was pissed at me. It was like, girl, how am I going to sew through all this fabric? This is too much. And then you just kind of attach the bodice and the skirt together. I just met the centers together and pinned them together and worked my waist to the side. And sewed those layers together. And then I can finally work on the straps. I'm getting real close to the end. I just got some little stringy straps. Sewed it together. For flipping it inside out, I used a bobby pin. I don't know if you can see in the background, I had a bunch of tools to flip fabric over and stuff, but like I couldn't figure out how any of that would work. And I ended up using a bobby pin anyways, so it was pretty pointless. And I wasted a bunch of time trying to figure out how to use those. And then I just pressed it nice and flat. Gotta make you presentable. And then I got that 7 inches of tulle that I had cut off the skirt, and I folded it in half, and I used a gathering stitch like I did for the skirt, because I'm going to be gathering this fabric to make almost like a gathered spaghetti strap. You'll see in a second. It's beautiful, I promise. And after gathering it all up, I attached it to those spaghetti straps I had just made. And once it's done, this is what it's gonna look like. Ain't that beautiful? I love it so much. So pretty, so gorgeous. Now, did I deliver or did I deliver? Those spaghetti straps, they beautiful. They so cute. Attach that to the dress. Make sure you go back and forth with this so that it can hold really, really well. And then finally, the last step, the zipper. Let's go. I'm done. Just sewing that thing on. And so I kind of like used a lighter to burn the edge so that it wouldn't come undone. Alrighty, so I'm pretty sure I completely forgot to include which pattern I used. It's a simplicity pattern. It's S9291. Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, comment, whatever you want to do. I appreciate it. Until next time, bye.